The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, probably one of the most controversial video games Nintendo has ever put out, right next to the original Skyward Sword, because, can't get enough controversy. I apologize for returning viewers. I had a bigger scripted, planned out video for this week, but that's taking a lot longer than I thought, because I'm adding more and more to it, so apologies, that's going to come out next week, and this is all unscripted. It's midnight on the Saturday, the day of me releasing this, and I needed a video to meet my weekly quote. Oh my god. So this is just going to be my unscripted first impressions and thoughts of the titular controversial game known as Skyward Sword, so let's get into it. So with Skyward Sword, a lot of the quality of life improvements are here. Everything's here. It's all quality of life improvements, and that's basically all you're gonna get with this package. I've logged about 5.5 hours into this game so far, and honestly, what I've played is just fantastic. I'm having a really good time. I haven't been this excited for a game in a long time, and it's just fun. Like, what more can I say about it? It's just a fun game. Screw the Twitter controversy, screw everything else with it. It's just a fun, really well-built game. And who cares if it's 10 years old? I would still pay $60 for this game. The animation on the characters is fantastic. This is, from what I've noticed, this is the most story-heavy Zelda game of all time. Like, for real? Because again, sorry for like all the likes and the pauses and the uhs and the all that kind of stuff. This is just all unscripted, and I probably won't even edit this audio. I'll just put slap footage over it and call it good. And this is probably the laziest video I've ever done, next to why the modded Sonic accelerators just don't work. But yeah, 5.5 hours. I've beaten the first temple. This game has a lot going for it. A lot of people aren't giving it the chance it deserves, mainly for the fact that it's, it's the big bad $60 Wii port, oh no. And yeah, I can understand for people who have played the game before on why they wouldn't want to pay another $60 for this Wii port with basically just updated textures. And I mean, that's not really all it is just HD. There's a lot of other, like I said before, the quality of life improvements. A lot of this stuff has been streamlined, A lot of this stuff has been streamlined for a smoother gaming experience. They've added button-only controls, which, honestly, I've played half on the TV with motion controls and half on handheld with button controls, and my input is, go with what you feel like, honestly, on that part, because both feel great. I'd say button controls is better with a Pro Controller. The Joy-Cons feel a little cramped, as the range of movement is not as vast as a regular Pro Controller would be, but I do believe that both set of controls are just as fine. Both have their ups and downs equally to make them just as viable, and that's, I don't know. It took me a little while to figure out some controls, some of the workarounds for the buttons, while using button controls, but it's once you get used to it, once you get to know the layout, kiss it on the cheek, mwah, it's just a good time. It's the motion controls can be a bit wonky at times because it's using gyro sensors, so you're going to be pressing Y a lot to recenter it. But otherwise, I have to press Y. You have to press Y a lot to recenter things, but it's not that big of a deal once you get into a habit of it. And raising your sword to the sky for a skyward strike kind of sucks. It takes a little bit. I think that's more comfortable and easy to do on the Pro Controller with the button controls, but it's still not a big issue. I feel like the button controls can it gives you an easier time for more precise controls. For precise swings, because with some enemies you're gonna have to swipe the sword in a certain way to kill them, and I feel like the button controls can give you an easier layout for that. But of course there are the downgrades that come with doing that, like having to press L to use the free-flowing camera, which can be a pain sometimes, but it's one of those things that you just get used to and it's all good. Of course, when you're using regular motion controls, you could use the free-flowing camera without pressing L, and that's just a huge save. You know, there's ups and downs to every kind of control scheme that you possibly use. And that's why I like both control schemes, you know. Like if I'm laying down, I'll use button controls, but if I'm feeling antsy or something, I'll use motion controls. It's really nice. The animation in the game is just absolute quality. So far, the story, you know, just the fact that it's set at the beginning of the Zelda timeline is more than enough to make me buy the game for a full $60, because, you know, that's just an interesting thing to me. I've never experienced the game back in 2011 when it came out, but it's always interested me about, you know, how the Master Sword was created, or what the beginning of The Legend of Zelda looks like, because this was before Hyrule was even created. And, you know, it's all just, it's the way that it's crafted, the way that it's put together. I love the characterization on all of the characters. Link has more of a personality than ever. He has way more of a personality than in Breath of the Wild. He actually smiles. Zelda is a really cute character. I love how she's characterized in this game, basically as a love interest to Link. Of course, I named him Stink because that's funny, but she's basically used as a love interest, but she's also a descendant of Hylia or something like that, from what I've heard. It's all just well put together. I love Skyward Sword right now. I'd put it's easily in my top 5 right now, like lower top 5, like number 4, number 5. But I can't wait to see what more of this game has in store. The linearity of the game is something that I'm definitely not used to. I'm more used to the open-ended Zelda games like Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess, Link's Awakening, that kind of stuff. And I can really appreciate that they wanted to go for something different for this type of game. But it's not my kind of Zelda game. I prefer the open-endedness and the exploration factor, the adventurousness. You know, that's what the original Zelda was based off of. I don't recommend playing it nowadays, but it's still a good foundation to bounce off of. But the linearity in the game isn't a bad thing. And while I make it sound like a bad thing, it's definitely not. It's just something that I'm not used to, and something that I honestly hope I don't see in another Zelda game again. While it's fine for the most part, again, I've already explained myself. I'm just going over and over again. But the linearity is good. It's used well enough in a fact that it doesn't bother me. There's a lot of looping ends and a lot of places that you can go and backtrack, and it makes it feel open-ended without actually being open-ended, and that's something I can really appreciate. Another thing with Skyward Sword is the soundtrack. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a really great soundtrack. I love the Skyward Sword soundtrack. It's the first fully orchestrated soundtrack in the Zelda series, and that's something I could definitely appreciate because I love orchestrated music. It's so, God, I can't stop gushing about it. And just the 5.5 hours that I've spent with this game, I love it so much. It's so fun, so charming. The art style is incredible. Groose, of course. How can I forget to mention Groose? It's freaking Groose. Nintendo even recognizes how awesome Groose is. They even made a fan can for that awesome dude. Bee is even less annoying from what I've heard in this game. She's actually quite the asset, because you can ask her for hints. You can ask her for anything, an assessment on what's going on. You know, it doesn't dumb down the gameplay. It makes it easier for you, and she doesn't give, like, too easy a hints like, oh, strike them with this and they'll die. It makes it a little easier, but doesn't dumb down the gameplay. And that's definitely something that I love, because I always love a challenge in my games. The combat is really fun. You have so many ways you could swing your sword, pop out your shield, so many items that you can use. It's all just great. I don't necessarily agree with porting these games for $60 with the very minimal changes to the game, but what they did add is really nice. And it's worth the $60 for me, just mainly because I've never played the original, so I'm treating it as a brand new game, despite how old it is. And yeah, I'm loving it so far. Kiss my ass, Twitter. If I were to put it on a scale, I'd give it a 7 out of 10 right now. I guarantee you, as time will go on, it'll probably bump up to a 9 by the time I'm done with the game. I love the characters, I love the story, the soundtrack, the gameplay. It's all fantastic, and I'm so glad I somehow stretched out this unscripted video to 10.5 minutes, because I would not have done any... Oh, yeah. Great game. See you, everybody. Love you. Mwah.